Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel for another midweek mystery video. I've got a different type of mystery for you guys today. This is a story that I've had in the back of my mind for the longest amount of time. I've wanted to tell it for ages, but I wasn't sure that my perspective was the best to hear it from, because this is a very spiritual story and I'm not a very spiritual person. I'm very much a realist. I believe that when you die, you die. I'm an atheist. I believe that the world today is a product of evolution. I don't believe in astrology or anything like that. So I approach stories like this from a more realist kind of viewpoint, so you have been warned. But regardless, I find stories like this really fascinating. But before I talk about this story, I want to talk about something really important. I was contacted a number of months ago by a company called Invisaware. They sell jewellery that could literally save your life. The products they sell look like necklaces, bracelets, keychains, fitness bands, even scrunchies. I personally have the keychain, but they're actually safety devices. Each style has a button hidden on the back. If you ever find yourself in a position where you feel like you're in danger, you can just double click this button to notify friends and family that you need help. When you double press it, it sends an SOS text message with your GPS location to 5 people you selected in the app. And it can also optionally contact the police if you want it to. Everyone deserves to feel safe going about their day-to-day life, and although I know life isn't normal for many of us right now, and it probably won't be for quite a while, I do believe this is a worthwhile investment to make. It could even make a great gift for a loved one who maybe works alone or works late at night or perhaps has some kind of medical condition. With Invisaware, there's no monthly fees or subscriptions, it's just a one-off purchase, and then you download the app, connect the jewellery to your phone via Bluetooth, and you're good to go. It's got a super long-lasting battery life, so you don't need to worry about charging it. It's just always there for peace of mind when you need it. This is the kind of thing that could actually save your life. You hope that you'll never ever need to use it, but just in case you do, it's there and it really could help. I'll leave the link to Invisaware in the description box down below. It will give you a 10% discount, and you can also stack that discount on top of other promotions I have on the website as well, which is really great. And also, just for full disclosure, it is an affiliate link, so if you buy through it, I'll also get a small commission as well. But yeah, I think it's really, really worth having a look at. But let's get back to today's story. So this story begins with the Pollock family, Florence and John Pollock, who lived in the quiet town of Hexham in Northumberland in England. They were a religious Catholic family, and they went on to have 2 daughters, Joanna and then Jacqueline, 5 years later. They also had 2 boys, 2 older brothers. Florence and John ran a grocery and milk delivery business, so the children were often cared for whilst they were growing up by their maternal grandmother. The girls were inseparable. Joanna was 5 years older than her younger sister and would mother Jacqueline constantly. They would spend hours playing with each other, off in their own little world. At the age of 3, Jacqueline fell into a bucket, an accident which caused her to have a scar on her forehead above her right eye. She was also born with a dark birthmark on the left side of her wrist. And by all accounts, they were a very happy, normal family. But then on the 7th of May 1957, when Joanna was 11 and Jacqueline was 6, both girls were killed when they were struck by a car as they were walking to church with a friend. Rumour has it that the driver of the car was a woman who was attempting to commit suicide after being separated from her own children. The woman had taken lethal quantities of drugs and got in her car, and it seems like she may have purposely aimed for the girls. They were killed instantly upon impact. The other boy they were with, Anthony, ended up dying later in hospital. This was a huge case across the UK. The suicidal woman didn't end up dying and was taken to trial, and the story was splashed all across the papers. This was really, really big. As expected, Florence and John Pollock were inconsolable over the loss of their daughters, and John turned to his Catholic religion to help him. He prayed for the return of his daughters every single day, which infuriated Florence. She dealt with it very differently, spinning off into a deep, deep depression. She didn't want to be reminded of her daughters every day, whilst they were all John could talk and think about. They argued about it constantly, especially when John would speak of his visions of their daughters being reborn to them in the form of twins. And despite Florence's disbelief of all this, she did indeed fall pregnant the next year, and on October 4th, 1958, she gave birth to twin girls. They had no history of twins in their family, and they were fully expecting only one baby. None of the doctors knew they were carrying twins, so it was a shock to all. They named the girls Gillian and Jennifer, and John was overjoyed. His premonition had come true. Their girls had been reborn to them. And this was further proven to them by the fact that Jennifer had 2 birthmarks. One that looked just like Jacqueline's scar on her forehead, and one that was in exactly the same place as Jacqueline's birthmark. Although they were identical twins, Gillian didn't have such birthmarks. From a quick Google though, it seems like it can be quite normal for one identical twin to have a birthmark that the other does not. If you're an identical twin yourself, can you confirm or deny this? Many years later, when the twins were around 20 years old, they had blood tests confirm that they were indeed monozygotic twins, identical twins, meaning they were born from a single egg. It's also been found that around 35% of potential reincarnation cases involve a birthmark or a birth defect linking to a previous life. When the girls were a few months old, the family moved from Hexham to Whitley Bay, and it's here that things would begin to get a little bit strange. According to John and Florence, as soon as the twins were old enough to talk, they began asking for and describing specific toys that Joanna and Jacqueline had owned. I'm not just talking about them saying they want a Lego set, for example, if Lego was even a thing in the 60s. They would specifically describe toys that their sisters had owned before them, toys that John and Florence had stored away up in the attic. They said that the twins would have had no way of knowing of the existence of these toys. And once the parents got them out of the attic, each girl claimed a doll. Reportedly, they started talking about how the dolls had been a gift from Santa Claus, which they had been many years beforehand, but for the other girls. When Gillian saw a toy clothes ringer that had also been a Christmas present for Joanna many years beforehand, she said, "There's my toy ringer." It's even reported that the twins named the dolls the same names their sisters had many years before them. They didn't bicker or quarrel over the toys, they just knew instinctively whose was whose. Florence said that she heard the girls talking about a car accident on many occasions. She once came across Gillian cradling Jennifer in her arms saying, "The blood's coming out of your eyes. That's where the car hit you." Indeed, when John went to identify the bodies in the morgue, Jacqueline did have bandages around her eyes. There was also an occasion on which Gillian pointed to Jennifer's forehead birthmark and said, "That's the mark Jennifer got when she fell on a bucket." It's thought that Gillian was a reincarnation of Joanna and Jennifer was Jacqueline. They even had the same general build, with Gillian/Joanna being more slender and Jennifer/Jacqueline being much more stocky. Their parents even said that they walked the same way, they had the same gaits. Jacqueline had had trouble learning to write at the time of her death because she held her pencil in a very strange way. Jennifer just so happened to develop the exact same habit when she was learning to write and didn't shake it for many, many years. Shortly after the death of Joanna and Jennifer, the Pollock's milk delivery business ceased. But whilst it was still running, Florence would work for the company. She would wear a smock while she was helping out. And when the twins were about 4 years old, John wore Florence's old smock just to do some painting. And Jennifer asked him repeatedly, "Why are you wearing Mummy's coat?" According to John and Florence, the twins would literally have never have seen Florence wearing this smock. And Gillian didn't recognise it because Joanna would have been at school whilst Florence would have been wearing it and working. And as I said, the Pollocks had moved away from Hexham whilst the twins were still very young, about 9 or 10 months old. But when they visited the area for the first time years later, the girls seemed to instinctively know their way around, asking to go to the park across the road that was hidden behind trees, even knowing which school they'd attended. They also showed an intense fear of cars. They were particularly careful and cautious around moving vehicles, occasionally having a full-on meltdown if a car started nearby. Now, it is worth bearing in mind, obviously, that all accounts we have of this come from Florence and John, the grieving parents. Eventually, their stories of their reincarnated twins caught the attention of the media, and it was featured in the local newspaper, which in turn caught the attention of a psychologist called Dr. Ian Stevenson. He would later feature the story of the Pollock twins in his book, Reincarnation and Biology, a contribution to the etiology of birthmarks and birth defects, and he would also mention the case in his later book, Children Who Remember Previous Lives, a question of reincarnation. In total, Ian Stevenson would write 12 books on the subject of reincarnation, focusing on studying cases of reincarnation, specifically in children. A lot of people who research reincarnation tend to focus on the stories of children. They're unburdened and unaffected by the world around them. Most of the time, what these children are saying can be taken as being something they actually believe to be true. These children have no concept of reincarnation in general, so they'd have no reason to lie about what they're saying or doing, unlike adults. In many cases, it could just be a case of an overactive imagination, for sure, especially in particularly astute children. But for these researchers who dedicate their lives to learning about reincarnation, it's safer to believe a child's story over an adult's. And also a lot of the time, a child will slowly forget stories as they grow older. It's particularly rare to find an adult who can still recount details of an apparent past life. As for the Pollock twins, they stopped showing memories of their past lives around the age of 5, and they were actually never told about the fact they were their reincarnated sisters until they were 13. They lived relatively normal lives, and when Ian Stevenson eventually actually met them in their 20s, they remembered absolutely nothing. They even showed mild skepticism about the fact they were reincarnated, but it is said that years later Gillian did experience new visions, where she saw herself playing in a sandpit. The house she described in this vision matched perfectly with the house the family lived in when they lived in Wickham, when Joanna would have been very, very young. They lived there even before they moved to Hexham. Before the twins were born, Florence did not believe in reincarnation. She was a devout Catholic, and her and John actually had many an argument about his strong belief in reincarnation while she was pregnant. Because yes, although John was also a strong Catholic, he for some reason really strongly believed in reincarnation. He'd been fascinated with the idea for years, and even before the twins were conceived, he had a feeling that his daughters would come back to him. Did he project his feeling about reincarnation so much that he simply moulded the twins into being his dead daughters? Is that even possible? Ian Stevenson said that even with the most intense focus from John, there's no way he could have forced them into such a tight mould. How can you force somebody to walk and have the same body type as somebody else? Those are generally things that are innate, inbuilt in somebody. I've also seen suggestions of maternal impression, which rests on the belief that a powerful mental influence working on a mother's mind may produce an impression on the child she is carrying. For example, it's somewhat of an urban legend that the mother of the Elephant Man was frightened by an elephant during her pregnancy, leading her to give birth to the Elephant Man. Or a pregnant woman who experienced great sadness might imprint her depressive tendencies onto the fetus in her womb. Of course, now we know that mental health can be genetic sometimes, but that's not necessarily what maternal impression refers to here. The idea is that Florence longed for her 2 daughters so much that the twins just became them. This theory, though, was largely abandoned by the medical profession throughout the 20th century. Maternal impression just isn't really a thing anymore. But is it really any crazier than the theory of reincarnation? Probably not. There's also the possibility that Gillian and Jennifer were nothing like their older sisters at all. Maybe Florence and John were so desperate for their daughters back they would plant things in the girls' minds. Maybe they mentioned the names of the dolls. Maybe they told them that a park was around the corner. It's possible they didn't even realise they were doing it. Maybe in personality they were nothing like their sisters, but John and Florence saw what they wanted to see. But this can be argued against by the fact that Gillian started experiencing visions of her past life years later, in the 80s. When you research reincarnation, you'll see the names of the Pollock twins reappear time and time again, as an excellent example in the Western world. In certain cultures and religions, reincarnation is accepted just to be the truth, but it's obviously much rarer to find people who believe in it over here. One thing for sure is that it's difficult to conceive how children in general could have such vivid memories and recollections of a previous life. Perhaps I'm a bit more sceptical when it comes to the case of the Pollock twins. There's a chance they may have been drip-fed this information by their family. The cases of reincarnation that are even crazier to me are when children can recall past lives that have nothing to do with them or their families. In researching this, I found a story of a boy called Ryan who began recollecting his past life at the age of 4. He could remember this past life in Hollywood, where he rubbed shoulders with the rich and famous. He could remember specific details about this man's life, which were later confirmed when they tracked down his living daughter years and years later. Completely obscure facts that no one else could have known were confirmed by the daughter. It's the cases like that that could sway even me to possibly believing in reincarnation. But the case of the Pollock twins doesn't quite do it for me. But I am very, very interested to hear from perspectives of people who are spiritual, who do believe in reincarnation. What are your thoughts on this case? Stevenson said that he thought it inconceivable that John and Florence Pollock could have moulded the behaviours of their twins to match that of their deceased daughters. But whose word do we have apart from theirs that the behaviour even matches at all? It could just be a case of nature versus nurture. If the twins were raised the same as their sisters, raised alongside their older brothers, surely it would only be natural they would share personality traits. I mean, I'm one of 4 children and know that me and my siblings all have very similar personalities, or at least in certain aspects. This is a case that's very open for discussion, very open for personal, individual interpretation, so I really can't wait to see the comments here. I know this case is a little bit different, but I thought it could just be interesting to share and discuss. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if there are any other different types of mysteries you'd like me to talk about. Sometimes it's just a nice break for me to look at something that isn't just death and despair and horribleness. Cases like this are really interesting to explore sometimes. I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.